Good evening. As Executive Director of the City Club of Central Oregon and co-chair for the League of Women Voters of Deschutes County Candidate Forums, I would like to welcome you to the Candidate Forum for Oregon Senate District 28, the Republican primary. This is a partisan race, and Oregonians have until April 30th to change or select a party affiliation or register to vote on the Secretary of State's website to participate. On behalf of City Club and the League of Women Voters, we would like to thank the candidates for participating and appreciate the gravity of running for office. Our moderator today is Mike Ficher with KPOV Radio.
Great. Thank you, Kim, for inviting me to serve as moderator this evening. Now, Oregon Senate District 28 spans from the California border into South Deschutes County. No Democrats have filed to run in this race. The Republican candidates are Dave Henslee and Diane Linthicum. Candidates will have 1 minute for their opening remarks and 1.5 minutes or 90 seconds to answer each question. Then at the conclusion of the question phase, each candidate will be offered 2 minutes for a closing statement. For opening statements, we have randomly selected the order, and the order of who answers each question first will be rotated. Candidate opening statements, again, will be 1 minute each. And Dave Henslee, we invite you to offer your opening remarks.
Well, thank you for allowing me to participate today and get my word out and my message to people in District 28. My name is Dave Henslee. I'm married. I've been married for nearly 31 years, and my wife and I have 3 amazing daughters. We own and operate 5H Cattle Company outside of Merrill, and I currently serve as a Klamath County Commissioner. Part of my work with Klamath County, I also serve as the co-chair of the Law Enforcement and Veterans Affairs Steering Committee, and I'm on the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Steering Committee for the National Association of Counties. I was a public servant for 28 years, and I served in law enforcement, retiring as the Chief of Police for the city of Klamath Falls. And as a Chief of Police, I served on the Oregon Association Chiefs of Police, the Oregon Accreditation Alliance, the Law Enforcement Executive Leadership Institute, and I was the president of the Oregon chapter of the FBI National Academy. And I have to give a quick shout out to Oregon State. I am a graduate of Oregon State University.
Great. Thank you, Dave. Now, Diane, your opening remarks, please.
Sure. Well, thank you also for hosting this candidate forum and for having me here today. It's definitely a pleasure to be with you. My husband and I have called our Klamath County ranch home for 30 years, where we raised cattle, horses, and our kids. We are now the proud grandparents of 6 grandkids. For background, I started my career in banking and accounting, and then I transitioned to homeschooling mom, stayed home and homeschooled the kids. While homeschooling our kids on our working cattle ranch, I was owner-operator of our computer consulting business as well. Subsequently, I owned an espresso stand in our farming community of Bonanza, where I also owned and operated a licensed commercial kitchen. So I have extensive experience with small business ownership. I understand the burdens imposed by heavy-handed bureaucracies on small business. Most relevant to my candidacy for state senate, for the past 8 years, I've served as chief of staff for Senate District 28, which includes Deschutes, Klamath, and Jackson counties. And I will approach my job as state senator with grit, acknowledging that, politics can be a tough field. I am committed to my faith, my family, Oregon, and America's values. As your next state senator, I'm committed to make Oregon the place people want to live, work, raise families, retire, and enjoy our abundant recreational opportunities.
Thank you, Diane.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Now let's commence with the questions, and we will be rotating the order of answer, and you will have 90 seconds for each question. So for the first question, we'll direct this to Diane's response first. District 28 is expansive, covering a large swath of Oregon. How do you plan to represent residents across the entire district?
Yeah, for the past 8 years, I have traveled with Senator Linthicum throughout the district. It's amazingly cohesive, I would say. It's mostly rural landscape. There, of course, we have the largest cities of Klamath Falls, and we've got like Sun River, La Pine, the eastern edge of Jackson County. So, but the folks are very conservative. They want their freedom. They want to be left alone to raise their families, make their medical decisions, keep their Second Amendment rights. And so it's really a fairly cohesive district. Working as chief of staff, I hear from the constituents and the people of this district. I work with them daily on issues that they may have with different agencies and things. But mostly they're very happy just being left alone to do their work, to raise their kids, to work their ranches, and they want to live in Oregon and enjoy what we have to offer here. And so I think Oregon needs to get out of the way and give people back their freedom to live their lives. And a big part of that is keeping their own resources so that they can direct those resources either to the educational choices or to expanding businesses and expanding their enterprises.
Thank you, Diane. Dave, same question. I'll read it again. District 28 is expansive, covering a large swath of Oregon. How do you plan to represent residents across the entire region?
I really like this question. And I think this question was suited for me, to be honest. Being a public servant for 30 years, I've dedicated my life to meeting people in their own space and being present for people and representing people. As a law enforcement officer, when you called 911 and I or somebody from my department arrived, we were there to meet your needs and your expectations. As the chief of police, I established the advisory group for the chief, and I met with that group on a constant basis to talk about issues that were relevant to the community. So I made sure that we were policing to meet the needs and expectations of the people. When I got elected as county commissioner, one of the things that I've said many times is that seat does not belong to me, it belongs to the people. And it is up to me to understand what the people's needs are and represent the greater good in a way that advances our communities in a positive direction. And I'm approaching this run for Senate with the same type of passion and purpose towards people. I believe that seat belongs to the people. People should have a choice in who they select to represent them, and they should represent somebody that meets their needs and their expectations. And I'm looking forward to doing that. So just getting out and meeting people in their space, understanding the priorities for the different communities across this vast district are highly important, and rolling up your sleeve and getting to work to do the work of the people are my priorities.
Thank you, Dave. And Dave, I'll ask you to respond to the next question first, and it kind of piggybacks on the first question. And I know you touched on it just a tad. How do you plan on engaging with your constituents?
That you're right. That does kind of go hand in hand. As a county commissioner, I represent everybody in Klamath County, which is the majority of this district. It's a little over 6,000 square miles. And I make sure that I'm in North County, I'm in East County, and I'm attending different events within all of the jurisdictions, within all of the municipalities, to understand what their priorities and their needs are. And then trying to work with them, not against them, but with them, to find solutions for their needs. We've got to, like I said, I mentioned a minute ago, we have to roll up our sleeves as public servants to do the work of the people. And that's something I've proven I've been able to do time and time again. But it's important to travel, to meet people in their space, to see where they live, to understand the issues that are relevant to them, and listen to their ideas on how to solve problems in their communities. They know those communities better than government does, to be honest. One of the issues that I struggle with the state of Oregon right now is they try to take away or limit local control from local elected officials. Local elected officials should actually be the mouthpiece for how things are going to get done in those communities and have a say in policy work that directly impacts their constituents. And I'm going to prioritize that in Salem as your next senator as well. We're going to make sure that local officials have a say in what goes on in their communities.
Thank you. And Diane, same question. I'll repeat it. How do you plan on engaging with your constituents?
Sure. Well, I will continue to do what I'm doing now, which is engaging on nearly a daily basis with constituents, and hearing their needs, hearing their desires for their communities. We do have to be sensitive to each community. Does have some unique characteristics, some situations that need consideration. You know, living in Klamath County for 30 years, we've been a part of the water wars, if you will, and the situation with the dams, which has been very unique to Klamath County. It is now extending up into Deschutes County. They're facing the same situation that Klamath County has been dealing with, and Willamette Valley as well. So as well as the Snake River, which impacts Deschutes County. So there's issues with agriculture, with land use, with water rights that we have to be aware of and able to work with Oregon Water Resources Department, the Farm Bureau, the cattlemen's. We utilize all those organizations to help manage the issues. Sadly, we are often on defense in the state capitol. We are often looking at bills and calling the Farm Bureau, calling the cattlemen's, calling the housing folks to come in and help us, you know, navigate how can you what can we do about this bill that is, you know, ostensibly going to be destructive to our communities? It may
Thank you,
be,
Diane.
oh, sorry.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to a slightly different subject, and Diane, I'll ask for you to respond to this first. What differentiates you from your opponent?
I think what differentiates me the most is the 8 years I've spent, basically, I'll say, in the belly of the beast. You know, it's not we are not there to sing Kumbaya and to link arms and work. We work with the Democrats, but we do not support their agenda. So I'm not there to support their agenda. I am there to represent the people of Senate District 28. And, you know, especially our rural values and our rural way of life, which is why people live in this district. They enjoy their freedoms and the land that they call home. So basically, you know, I'm there to serve the people of Klamath, Deschutes, and Jackson counties, and what is best for those counties, as well as, you know, every vote we take does affect all Oregonians. But I do think that my Republican principles serve the people of Oregon better than some of the Democrats' ideas of you know, tax, spend, regulate, and rule. So I would be, let's push for freedom, let's push for lower taxes, let's push for less government.
Great, thank you. Dave, same question. What differentiates you from your opponent?
I think the key thing that differentiates me from my opponent is I'm a proven, and I'm a dedicated public servant. I've been a public servant for 30 years. And through my training, my experience, and my time serving people, I've learned that I should be accountable, and I am accountable to people, and meeting the needs and expectations of people is my priority. I value all people. I think everybody has a place. Everybody has a position on this earth, and it's not for me to judge what that is. But I believe everybody brings value to the table. I believe in being accountable to those around me and making sure that I do everything in my power to make sure they are successful and they are prosperous. And I enjoy finding strength in differences with people. I want people to challenge me. I want people to tell me that there's a different way to do things, to expand my horizon, to expand my knowledge of issues. So I'm a dedicated and passionate public servant. I think that's one thing that distinguishes or differentiates me. The other thing that I think is really important is I've proven that when there's a job to be done, I will stay until the job is done. When people call 911 and asked for my assistance, they expected me to walk them through that entire process. And be a servant to them. And I make sure that I find solutions for people. I'm also a relationship builder. I relate very well to people, and I enjoy solving problems and working for the good of the community, for the greater good.
Thank you, Dave. And Dave, I'll ask you to respond to this next question first, and this will touch on kind of your agendas. Describe your one or two most pressing issues for the 2025 legislative session.
I think there's still a lot of work to be done around the damage that ballot measure 110 did to our communities when we decriminalized drugs. As the the co-chair of the Law Enforcement and Veterans Affairs Steering Committee for the Association of Counties. We fought side by side with our chiefs, with our sheriffs, and with our district attorneys to recriminalize drugs and shift the needle when it comes to holding criminals accountable in Oregon and providing access to treatment to get people off of drugs. I was really proud of the work that many men and women did to pass ballot measure 4002, but there's still some work to be done. I think for all of our communities across District 28 to be successful and prosperous, we need to start with safe communities. And my background in policing is something I'm clearly passionate about when it comes to public safety. I'm going to prioritize public safety at every level across the state of Oregon. People need to have pride in their communities. They need to feel safe in their communities. They need to feel like they can go outside, they can go to parks, their car's not going to be broken into, that they can get to their jobs. It all starts, in my opinion, with safe communities. So I will prioritize that. And then second, I will do anything in my power to cut through red tape, to get through bureaucracy so we can get some businesses established, reduce tax burdens, but we need to work on our economy to incentivize our economy for prosperous communities as well.
Thank you. And Diane, same question. I'll read it again. Describe your one or two most pressing issues for the 2025 legislative session.
So I think, you know, a question like that is interesting because in the long session, we have nearly 4,000 bills that come before the legislature, move through committee and then come before the legislature. And so how I will view my position is I will look at every bill in committee and every vote on the floor through the lens of lower taxes, less government, and more freedom. And by that, I mean, does it empower the government or does it empower the people? Does it add unnecessary bureaucracy and regulations? Does it enhance or restrict the freedoms of individuals and families to make choices about education, healthcare, private property? There are so many, we're getting hit at so many different levels. The people in Oregon, and particularly the people in Senate District 28, who are living a different lifestyle than the people and want a different lifestyle than the people in Portland. So I think we have to uphold our Second Amendment rights. They have been under attack for the 8 years that I have been in Salem. Our Second Amendment rights have had more attacks than I think in the past, 30 years. So they are hitting hard and heavy on Second Amendment rights. We have to support our private property rights, which also includes our private businesses. So, no more lockdowns and closing of businesses and a bureaucrat deciding what's an essential business and what is not. We also have a big passion for me would be educational choice and freedom. I would bring forth bills for education savings accounts so that the money follows the child versus people being pigeonholed into the district where they live for their zip code. I think that's hindering the progress of our children's education. And, Oregon just slipped another notch.
Thank you. Thank you, Diane. Now, Diane, I'll ask you to respond to this next one, and it piggybacks on the previous question. With the issues that you touched on, what specific legislation would you propose or support to address the issues that you touched on?
Sure. So I would definitely, as I was starting to comment, education choice is a passion. I hope to be on the education committee. Senator Linthicum was on the education committee, and it was really interesting to be a part of those committee hearings and to just see what got brought forth. So I would definitely propose education savings accounts, as well as, which is the money following the child. So, when you have $15,000, $16,000 allocated for each child, that's a lot of money for families. And I would have it can be for homeschooling, for private schooling, for public school, for charter school use. And I think that will increase the education value for our children and our families enormously. And then I would also, I'm a pro-life candidate, so I would bring forth, as we have for the 8 years I've been there, we have brought forth the education choice bills. We have also brought forth the life bills, protecting life at every stage, life in the womb as well as the elderly, so that every life is precious and valuable and needs to be protected. We have brought forth legislation that has not even made it out of committee to take care of children who are born alive after an abortion procedure. And so that seems rather barbaric to let the child die on the table with no health care when they could live, they could survive, but instead they're left to die. And so that's a legislation I would definitely bring forth again next year. We also have to fight back against.
Thank you, Diane. Appreciate the response. Dave, the same question, and I'll repeat it. What specific legislation would you propose or support to address the issues that you outlined as most pressing?
Reduction of taxes. Number one, I had a really interesting conversation with the Oregon Business and Industry Political Action Committee and learned today that they're going to support my campaign. And through that, I learned a lot of things about how taxes are really a hindrance to business coming into Oregon. And the cat tax, the damage that the cat tax has done to business in Oregon as well, and reducing our competition across at the federal stage. So I really want to dive in deep and understand how taxes are having negative impacts on enhancing our economies and what that's doing to damage businesses, specifically local businesses, where we need to continue to prioritize. So I want to do a deep dive into some legislation regarding rolling back some taxes that are having damaging effects on our communities. Number two, we need to make sure that the state continues to fund deflection programs and access to treatment for drug use. And we need to make sure that we don't face any more damaging legislation that reduces accountability on criminals and what they're doing in our communities as well. So I will support or oppose any legislation that takes away money for communities for treatment and deflection programs, or does any more damage when it comes to not holding criminals accountable. And then lastly, I've only got 14 seconds left. We need to make sure that the state continues to fund community corrections. There was a $16 million deficit in community corrections across the state this year that we're fighting to get back and make sure that that continues to be funded.
Thank you, Dave. I'll ask you to respond to this next question first, and this touches on more specific issues. What changes, if any, would you support in the state legislature to address the issues of water availability and wildfire mitigation?
Oh, this is an excellent question. Water, as Diane brought up a little bit ago, I've got 4 water contracts at our ranch, and we haven't got water in 4 years. So I understand the damage that water is having. But interestingly, when we start thinking about the forest as it relates to the entire watershed, if we actually change the way we manage our forests, there's actually water locked up in our forest that can be used to enhance the water availability within the Klamath watershed. So we've got to have better management of our forests, which I think will greatly enhance our water availability and our water quality. Right now, in Klamath County, we were not fully utilizing Title III funds to put toward fuel mitigations within Klamath County. So we brought back, and I spearheaded the approach to develop a committee that looks at Title III projects so we can get Title III dollars in the tune of $1.6 million back out to the communities to do fuel mitigation projects to eliminate some of these devastating wildfires that we're having. So we need to continue to think about funding for fuels mitigation projects. We need to continue to have conversations about proper management of our forest industry. So there's more money to be had with timber production, as well as unlocking some of the untapped potential when it comes to water availability within the entire watershed. I could go on for hours on that topic, but I'll leave it at that for now.
Thank you. And Diane, I'll repeat the question. What changes, if any, would you support in the state legislature to address the issues of water availability and wildfire mitigation?
Sure. Well, that's a big question. So the water availability is really interesting when our policies are going about and blowing dams and allowing our fresh water to flow into the salty Pacific. So when we talk about having depleted water tables, there's nothing better for the water table than to have a reservoir that is then restoring and recharging our aquifers. So we're damaging ourselves. So we have to reverse these policies at their core in terms of, they're marching through, as I mentioned, the Willamette Valley is facing dam removal issues as well as the Snake River, and that's only going to harm the availability of water. So that's one thing. The forest issues and our fires, again, we need to get the free market back into the forest. We need to start logging and utilizing our timber. It's criminal to every summer fill our skies with smoke, destroy our forests and timberlands and animals and wildlife and watersheds with unbelievable forest fires. So we have to get back to our free market solutions that we've had worked for years in Oregon and the West, and with smart policy, utilize every boy coming out of high school had a job, utilize our forests for productivity and for, that will supply our housing needs as well as recharge aquifers and, just be helpful all the way around.
Thank you. And Diane, I'll ask you to respond to this next question first. And again, it touches on a specific issue. What role, if any, would you support for the state legislature to play in addressing income inequality in Oregon?
I would always go to the free market. I do not believe in the minimum wage laws. I don't believe in government setting those rules and laws for businesses to follow. Businesses know how to keep good employees and the pay that is necessary and the benefits. And that, again, that has worked for tens of years here in the United States and has actually allowed us to be as dominant in the world economy by giving people and businesses the freedom. Oregon is losing businesses. I hear from landlords, people who own private property rentals daily, that they are, giving up. I'm leaving because of rent control and the problems they're having, even, getting a derelict renter evicted, people who have damaged their properties, and businesses face that same situation where they've got, overtime to pay and health benefits and all these crippling bureaucratic regulations and rules that are detrimental to businesses and free markets. And, we have the same thing in agriculture. The ag overtime bill, we fought and fought and fought against that, and we could not budge the Democrat majority with that bill, although it is so damaging, and our great farmers and ranchers and dairymen are working hard to keep up with that, all those regulations.
Thank you. And Dave, I'll repeat the question. What role, if any, would you support for the state legislature to play in addressing income inequality in Oregon?
So there's a couple things. There are many ways to address this, but the two that kind of rose to the top as I was listening to Diane talk for me are workforce development. There are many there are many programs specifically here in Klamath County that I really like. And there are apprenticeship programs at Klamath Community College. They just opened the apprenticeship program to really focus on getting people access to the trades. Not everybody's going to go to college, and I think that's okay. But opening up those trades and the availability for people to get good, solid wage paying jobs through the trades is incredibly important. There are high schools in Klamath County that are providing apprenticeship programs directly with employers. And we've learned some really fascinating programs being done at Henslee High School, Mazama High School. So the state needs to recognize the importance of those apprenticeship programs and help support those financially. And I think that workforce development is huge. The second thing that I'll talk about just briefly is broadband infrastructure. In rural counties like District 28, there are communities across this county that don't have access to broadband, like the city of Klamath Falls or Lapine or Sun River. And we need to make sure that we're developing that infrastructure to provide access to broadband for people across the entire district, so people can work from home. They have better access to get their crops and their animals to market. They can check for different resources from the state through different programs. But those are the two that rose to the top for me: workforce development and broadband infrastructure availability.
Thank you, Dave. And Dave, I'll ask you to respond to this next question first. What should Oregon be doing to address the homeless crisis?
One of my priorities is housing and homelessness. And currently we are standing up, and I'm spearheading standing up the homeless task force in Klamath County. There are a lot of organizations doing incredible work in this space. But what I have noticed is we are siloed in that, and we're all going different directions. Even though we're doing great work, there's not a common focus or a common theme when it comes to addressing homelessness. So we're trying to get everybody together in the same space. So when we provide services to somebody in need, that person can get a yes immediately, whether it be getting their driver's license back, working with the DA's office about reducing some charges, whether it be a childcare issue, a job issue, their cars broke down, they need a house, whatever their issue is that needs to be addressed for them to overcome the homeless situation or the near homeless situation. Task forces can be able to step in immediately and solve those problems and meet people in their own space. So I think it's really important that the state takes a hard look at how are we developing these programs within each of the jurisdictions to really tackle and address this. People should have a vested interest in working through that process. So if you're working with a task force to overcome that homeless issue, there should be benchmarks, there should be goals, there should be objectives. And as people are working through and meeting those objectives, we're helping them overcome some of the issues in their lives.
Thank you. And Diane, I'll repeat the question. What should Oregon be doing about the homeless crisis?
So the homeless crisis, I believe, is I think it's twofold. There's a supply and demand issue, as well as we also have a drug addiction problem, which is causing homelessness, because so many of the folks that you see in the homeless camps, as I know Dave would agree with this, I would imagine that so many of them are affected by drugs and that addiction in their life. So we need treatment for that. And the supply and demand issue, I believe, is in large part of our forest policy problem. You know, the governor has a dream of 36,000 housing units a year to be built. We can't be closing mills, not harvesting our timber, expecting that we're going to import it from Canada or somewhere else around the globe to supply the lumber and building materials for the 36,000 housing units. And in the first place, though, I don't think it's the governor's job. I don't think the government is qualified to build the necessary housing units for people want choices. They want to be able to, you know, live in an apartment, live in a townhouse, live in a single home, live on 40 acres. So we also need, our land use policies are also hindering home building and property for folks, because they can, you know, you have to have 200 acres to build a home if it's exclusive farm use. We need to loosen up those land use, the urban growth boundary, so that we can build more homes and they'll be more affordable when we have more in place.
Thank you, Diane. I'll ask you to respond to this question first, and I know you just touched on it in your response, but I encourage you to expound further. If you could, what would you change about Oregon land use laws?
Sure. Well, I would definitely reduce the need. I think if we said, look, if you've got 20 acres, if you've got 10 acres, you know, that can be decided in committees and legislation in a task force. What's the best solution to allowing people to build more? We had to fight just to allow an ADU on a property, on exclusive farm use property or ranch land. So I think there's a lot of legislative solutions that we can have, just opening up our properties to allow for more development. We have a neighbor here who has 40 acres and their daughter's getting married, and they can't afford to buy a home, but they could work and build a home on that property, but they're not allowed a building permit because it's only 40 acres. And the idea is to protect our high value farmland. Well, they've got areas that are easily accommodate a dwelling. And so no one's going to put that in their high value irrigated farmland. They're going to put it out on a rock outcropping that is easily suitable to another dwelling. And we can allow people the freedom to do things like that. And, you know, we can put some parameters in place so that we don't get out of bounds in our land use. But I think we just need to allow for more freedom, more free market solutions to our housing issues, not expect the government to come in. Across the nation, the HUD developments are just going under the wrecking ball. So free markets is the way to go.
Thank you, Diane. And Dave, I'll repeat the question for you. If you could, what would you change about Oregon land use laws?
I think this is a really complicated question in that it can go many, many directions. There are things about Oregon land use laws that I do greatly appreciate. For example, we don't. There are rules and restrictions about blight and about junkyards on property that could bring down property values for your neighbors. So there are things that I think are important, but there are things that I think are utterly ridiculous. I think there should be some more freedoms for people to do what they want with their land. And we talked briefly about accessory dwelling units. I think that's huge. There are many opportunities to put second homes on property to increase the values of those properties, to provide housing for employees, for family. There are many, many reasons I won't try to explore in 90 seconds, but I think reducing some restrictions on ADUs is really important. But there's two more things I want to hit on. We need to make sure that we continue to protect our farmland, because when we give up our farmland, we will never give it back, or we will never get it back. And we need to protect our food supply. If we get rid of our farmland and we start importing our food, people are going to control our district. They're going to control our state, and they're going to control our nation. We need to protect our own food supply. So we do need to protect farm use or farmland. I think that's really important in that conversation. I was going to go on with one more piece, but I'll leave it at that for now.
Thank you, Dave. And Dave, I'll ask you to respond to this next question first. Little change in direction for the moment. How do you feel about the Greater Idaho movement?
So, I have mixed feelings about it. Some days I think it's a wonderful idea. Other days I think it's an impossible lift, and there's no way the state of Oregon will ever agree to it. So I kind of go back and forth. But here in Klamath County, our voters voted yes to explore that. And I briefly touched on in the beginning that this seat of Klamath County Commissioner does not belong to me. It belongs to the people. And I was blessed that they allowed me to serve in that role. So I think it is my job to look into it, to understand the pros and cons, to fully explore the opportunity, and see if that will be beneficial to the state of Oregon, specifically Southern Oregon and this district. But that is not a decision that I should make in my role as a county commissioner. It's a decision that was made by the voters, and something that I think is going to be interesting to explore moving forward.
Great. Diane, same question. How do you feel about the Greater Idaho movement?
I am in favor of the Greater Idaho movement. Senator Linthicum proposed that bill, and he's done it for 2 sessions. Last session, it actually did get read on the floor, which was a first, did not happen prior. So we were excited about that. I think it's a well put together concept. I agree with David, is a hard lift, and we have told the folks of the Greater Idaho movement, as well as the state of Jefferson, that's been a movement in place here in Klamath County and Siskiyou County in California for quite a few years. Actually, I think it's about 60 or 70 years. So the Greater Idaho movement, though, they are well organized. They've got good people working to get this passed. As Dave mentioned, it's not a proclamation, but it's so that the counties then have to form a task force within the county of just citizen folks to look at the concept of joining with Idaho. So I think now we have 15 counties, and I think it's worthy of a statewide discussion with the folks on the other side of the hill, on the west side, and with the governor, that 15 counties are thinking don't want to be a part of Oregon anymore because the burdensome regulations, rules, taxes, etc., that are just hindering their ability to live life to the fullest. And so I think it's a great conversation starter, and I'm excited to continue that.
Great. Thank you, Diane, for your response. And I'll ask you to respond to this next question first, and it kind of returns us to some core issues in the state. Please share ideas that you plan to bring forward to encourage economic development in this region?
First and foremost, we have to reduce taxes. We have to reduce burdensome regulation and rules, and allow people the freedom to succeed. When you say if you have 25 or more employees, you have to now have paid family leave, which is a bill that passed in the 8 years we've been there. And so therefore, what people do is, okay, I can't have more than 25, so they no longer grow. The same thing with the cat tax. I've talked to constituents in Deschutes County who own a auto repair shop, and they would like to expand, but their accountant said, if you expand, you will be under the cat tax burden. So they are not expanding. And this is, I am sure, this is just one example. And so it is a problem where we create these rules, regulations, taxes under the guise of, reducing emissions and, saving the planet. And what it does is it hinders economic development. It stops growth. We are lacking jobs and infrastructure and all the things that are necessary to live happy and free lives in Oregon. So, the tax spend, rule and regulate crowd in Salem must be stopped. And, we have to push back against that in order to allow for more expansion and economic development.
Thank you, Diane. Dave, same question. Please share ideas that you have that would bring or encourage economic development in the region.
Well, this is a really loaded question too that can go multiple different directions. But first and foremost, I think you have to have safe communities. And I touched on that. Number two, I think that you have to have adequate inventory of housing. And specifically in Klamath County and in District 28, we do not. Many people believe that we need to just build more workforce level housing. And I too agree with that. We hear sometimes that we don't have enough low income housing, but that's in fact not the case. We have great inventory of low income housing, but we're missing that workforce section of housing where people that can afford to live within that bracket are actually buying down because we have a compression issue in that market. They're not buying up, they're buying down, which is causing a lack of inventory in the low income housing. So we need to work on our housing inventory greatly. And I touched a little bit on workforce development. When we're looking to bring businesses into an area, they want to know what the workforce looks like. They want to know what the housing inventory looks like. They want to know about recreation and what they can provide to people that work for their business when it comes to recreation. They want to know about schools. What's the education like in that area? There are many factors that inspire businesses to come into a geographical area. But once you do have a business that's interested in moving to your area, you need to look at reduction of taxes. You need to talk about incentives. You need to talk about grants, and you need to provide opportunities to make it easy for a business to come in and grow and prosper in a specific area.
Thank you, Dave. We have time for about 2 more questions before we invite the candidates to offer their closing statements. And Dave, I'll ask you to respond first to this next question. What are your top funding priorities in this district?
Top funding priorities are things that I've already kind of touched on. We need to make sure, let me start with this. I'm going to give you a broad answer to start. We need to push back on all unfunded liabilities at the local government level. One of my biggest pet peeves is when the state of Oregon over on the other side of the hill has this wonderful idea and they tell Klamath County, Deschutes County, or Jackson County what they're going to do and the programs they need to stand up, but there's no finances to go with it. There's no money to go with it. So we've got to push back on all unfunded liabilities, in my opinion, at the local level, to make sure that that local people that are elected at the local level continue to have control about what happens in their jurisdictions. So that's number one. That's important to me. Number two, we need to continue to make sure that there are programs that the state has agreed to fund that they continue to fund. For example, defection programs, community correction programs. We need to make sure that we continue to have access to adequate treatment programs. We built a treatment facility in Klamath County that we are not using as a treatment facility because we can't get insurance for it. That makes no sense to me. Why do we have this amazing facility that we're not using? We need to continue to make sure that we have opportunities to use those those facilities in the way they're intended to do. And a lot of that comes down to dollars and cents, and the state needs to step up and make sure that we continue to prioritize programming for local government.
Thank you, Dave. And Diane, same question. What are your top funding priorities in this district?
I would say that, we do have to, I think we have to deal with the Measure 110 fallout. We did some of that in HB 4002 in this last session, where we did provide a lot of funding for deflection programs and getting help for the addiction situation that is just overwhelming in Oregon and is amazingly affecting our rural communities also. People would probably not think so, but we see that situation in our rural communities quite heavily. So we need to continue funding that, continue funding our law enforcement and our public safety and those institutions so that we have that foundation for the community to be safe and to build on. Secondly, I think community colleges are vital for our communities in that, we see here in Klamath County, as well as the Rogue Community College, as well as the community college in Deschutes County, do really vital work. It's kind of under appreciated perhaps in the work that they do to educate our students in especially specific job skills like firefighting, like nursing and home building. And, there's just numerous jobs that they work with our students to be able to then get out into the workforce and accomplish. And so I think community colleges are just such a great asset that need our continued appropriate funding for. So I think education as well, although I would not just lump sum it to public education. I think I would have a parameter of education savings accounts. Let's open up the education model so that we allow for more freedom. We know that children just do not learn in the same way. And so we cannot cookie cutter our children. So we need some freedom there. And the funding is great for that, but some freedom with it as well.
Thank you, Diane. And this will be the final question before we invite the candidates to offer their closing statements. And Diane, I'll ask you to respond to it first. How do you propose working with your Democratic colleagues in Salem?
Working with the Democratic colleagues in Salem is just a part of life there, just like we work with everyone in our communities and our neighbors and our friends and folks that we agree with and disagree with. I think it's important to have conversations, to have meetings, to come together and try to work towards solutions. But I think the most important thing is to stand on our principles and to not be a go along, get along politician in Salem. I don't think that's what the people of Senate District 28, that's what I hear on a daily basis. They do not want a go along, get along politician. They want someone to stand firm. They want someone who's willing to walk out when it's an egregious bill that is attacking families, parental rights, and our children and their futures. And so I will stand firm on those principles. I will not waver. I will not compromise on tax and spend bills. I think the Oregon government we had a $5 billion surplus. I don't think we need any more taxes like the proposed statewide property tax. I will oppose that with everything I've got because that is so harmful to our citizens and especially those on incomes that just are not going to be able to handle that. So it's so detrimental to our people. So.
Thank you. And Dave, same question. How do you propose working with your Democratic colleagues in Salem?
There are core principles that I believe greatly in that my parents instilled in me a long time ago that I carry with me each and every day as I make decisions. And those core principles don't align with other people sometimes. And I think that's okay. I think it's okay to also value that they have core principles that are really important to them. For 30 years as a public servant, I've worked with people from all different walks of life. And I value them and I appreciate them. but I do hold my core values close to my heart and find those to be very important. Listen, at the end of the day, I'm a problem solver. I'm a relationship builder, and I get results. I've proven that time and time again through my career in policing, through my job as the chief of police, and now as my job as a county commissioner, and even owning my cattle ranch. You know, there are things that are going to be very challenging when I'm in Salem, but at the end of the day, you roll up your sleeves, you meet with people, you rely heavily on the relationships you've built with them, and you talk through problems. I think the people of District 28, and for that matter, anybody in our entire state, they expect to elect somebody that's going to get results, and they're going to answer the call, and they're going to stay put, and they're going to continue to fight. We're the minority. Republicans are the minority in Salem, and there's going to be bad legislation. And when that happens, you fight back against that bad legislation and you find a better way tomorrow. But there's always going to be a tomorrow, and there's always going to be another fight. And I will be there time and time again, fight after fight, protecting District 28.
Thank you to both Dave Henslee and Diane Linthicum for answering the questions from the League of Women Voters. Now we will invite both candidates to offer their closing statements. They will have 2 minutes each for their closing statements. And Diane, I invite you to offer your closing statement first.
Thank you. So what the people of Senate District 28 tell me is they want a state senator with a backbone who will stand up to the Portland politicians. I will support our small businesses, our agriculture and water rights, families, and parental rights. I will work to deregulate, to delegislate, and to take back the freedom to succeed, to raise our families, to determine the best education for our kids, to make our own medical choices free from coercion or mandates. I will stand up to the tax and spend, regulate, and rule class in Salem. I will stand firm on my commitment to no new taxes. I will continue to fight the Democrats' latest tax scheme of a statewide property tax. Democrats promised to bring it back in 2025, and I will not compromise on this destructive bill. We don't need any more compromisers and deal makers. We don't need any get along, go along politicians in the state Senate. And I will also bring legislation in 2025 to eliminate the estate tax or submit a bill to change Oregon estate tax to match the federal level. Salem has a spending problem. I will not compromise with the out of control tax, spend, regulate, and rule class in Salem. Oregon's government must live within its means and allow the miracle of free market solutions to our affordable housing problem. Lastly, I'm proudly endorsed by Oregon Right to Life, Oregon Firearms Federation, Oregon's Young Republicans. State Senator heroes have also endorsed me. Senators Boquist, Thatcher, Robinson, Weber, and Senator Linthicum. I'm also endorsed by 2 state representatives within Senate District 28, Representative E. Werner Reschke and Representative Emily McIntyre. So election integrity is also a top priority that I will support. In-person voting with valid ID. I think in closing, that is paramount to keeping our republic in place.
Thank you, Diane. And Dave, your closing statement.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And again, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to sit here with you guys today and share my thoughts. And Diane, it's always great to see you. You're extremely articulate, and I enjoy listening to you speak. I believe that Senate District 28 is looking for a senator that gets results. They are looking for a senator with a proven track record that can show what they've done in the past to get results for communities. And I am that person. I believe that my training, my experience, my knowledge, my passion for community service will help me rise to District 28 to be the senator of District 28. My priorities, I believe, align quite nicely with District 28, and those are ensuring exceptional public safety, enhancing the economy while prioritizing our local businesses, beneficial management of our natural resources and protection of our food supply, workforce development and enhancement, addressing the need for housing and the homeless situation in the district, and advancing South Central Oregon at the state and federal levels. I'm really excited about this campaign. I think our campaign has gained a lot of movement as of late. I also have many, many endorsements from senators, reps. Senator Finley has endorsed my campaign, also Representative Reschke and McIntyre as well. Christine Drazen has jumped on my campaign as a supporter of the campaign, as well as all of the chiefs of police across the state of Oregon through the Oregon Association Chiefs of Police. Sheriff Nate Stickler from Jackson County has endorsed my campaign, Commissioner Tony DeBone, as well as many political action committees that have stepped up to financially support the campaign, including the Forest Industry Council, the Automotive Dealers Association, Oregon Business and Industry Candidate PAC, and the Oregon Healthcare Association. So thank you to everybody that has rallied behind me and is looking for a new direction and is looking for new leadership in the state of Oregon.
Thank you to the candidates, Dave Henslee, Diane Linthicum, for participating in today's forum. Your vote is your voice. Ballots will be mailed May 1st. Make sure to get your ballots postmarked by May 21st so that your voice can be heard. For more information about all the candidates in the 2024 primary election, we invite you to check out vote411.org. On behalf of the League of Women Voters, I'm Mike Ficher. Thanks so much for watching.